Welcome to a new season of Beads, Baubles and Jewels. Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, and this season we're making it tonight and wearing it tomorrow. And today's featured designer is Abbi Berta. She'll show us how to get started with just a few basic supplies. Then we'll build our skills to make truly artistic jewelry. Welcome, Abbi.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Glad to have you here on the show.
Thanks.
And let's take a look at these beautiful earrings that you're going to show us how to make.
Okay.
Two really important things to know about the projects today is they're going to be pretty quick, so people could get started with them right away. And they also use these beautiful pre-made components.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it looks like you're also layering them together in a lot of different ways. So you've got some cold connections going on, some riveting, wire wrapping, just those are the two main techniques, right? And then people can wear their jewelry tomorrow.
Definitely.
All right, well, why don't you show us how we get started?
Okay.
And definitely we want to talk about these materials.
Sure. The first thing that I'm going to do is take a piece of recycled upholstery vinyl. So I'm going to take my scissors and just cut them at an angle.
You could do the same technique with ribbon, or you could use leather. There are all kinds of different materials that you could use.
Definitely. What's really cool about the recycled vinyl is that it's really sturdy and it doesn't fray.
All right, so you can wear it again and again, and you don't have to worry about it looking kind of worn out.
Definitely.
All right.
So the next step is I'm going to take one of my components and my 2-hole punch, and I'm just going to punch a hole in the component. Now, these pieces already have a hole, but...
Let's talk about your components just for a sec.
Okay.
They come in different colors, they have a lot of different texture on them, and you can do a lot of different things to the surface of them as well.
Definitely. They're lead and nickel-free pewter, and they're electroplated with fine silver, copper, and brass, and then they have an anti-tarnish coating, so they always stay nice and shiny.
Pretty.
Yeah.
All right, and so with the 2-hole punch, you know, a lot of people are familiar with it, but just in case you aren't, it does have the 2 different sizes, so that you can use it for different applications.
Definitely. So I just punched a hole. What I'm going to do is take one, I'm going to take my vinyl and cut a quick little slit near the top so that I can set my eyelet through it.
Okay.
I'm going to place my eyelet down on my eyelet setter, and I'm going to put the vinyl right on top so that the eyelet is coming through it.
All right.
So the flared end of the eyelet is already down on the eyelet setter. I'm going to center it and place my component down over the top. And I'm going to take my eyelet setter and center it right in the eyelet. What I like to do is kind of put my hand down on the block itself so that it stabilizes me. I'm going to take my hammer and just work around. Kind of check, make sure we've done everything correctly so far. What we're looking for is that the eyelet flares at the top. I'm just going to kind of center it again and place everything back into its alignment. Whoops.
Okay.
And then do a few more whacks with the hammer.
These would make some great gifts too, because you could whip up a whole bunch of these in one night.
Yeah, they're really quick and easy. So the next step is I'm going to take a little piece of chain. You want to make sure you have a chain that's thin enough that it's going to be able to go through your eyelet.
Okay.
And my little trick is I like to take the end of my chain and kind of make the link a little bit more round. That way it's easier for me to get my earring finding through it.
So it has to be small enough to pass through that eyelet hole, but then you want to kind of open it up a little bit?
Definitely.
Just at the ends?
Just at the ends, just the very last link. And I just take my pliers and just give it a little bit of a squeeze. And sometimes this can be tricky, but I like to just kind of isolate that link and give it one little squeeze.
Okay.
So.
Well, you definitely wouldn't want to try to get in there with your hammer or anything.
No. So once you've done that, basically what you're going to do is just slide it through, and then you're going to do the same thing to the other link on the other side. Now I have one that I've already done that to. So these here
are already a little bit open.
Yeah, they are. They're just kind of
wider.
rounded out. You don't want to completely smush it, but you want it just to kind of be a little bit more circular. So then I'm going to take an earring finding and my chain nose pliers and just gently open it. And I like to always open it kind of in this direction That way you can go ahead and close it back into a good position. So I'll just, whoops, wrong way. You want to hook the front loop first, and then you want to hook the back loop. So
Okay.
you'll just...
So you're creating your little hanger.
Yep, that's
That looks
exactly
really
what
good.
I'm doing.
Yeah. So, and since you are layering with that pre-made component there on the earring, we're going to do the same thing on the bracelet. Well, using the same type of idea with the layering components on the bracelet.
Definitely, we are.
All right. So, and that starts out with a pre-made cuff.
It does. It's a brass cuff. A lot of people use it for bead embroidery, or they use it to start their metalsmithing projects. So the first thing that we're going to do is take a micro torch. Actually, the first thing that we're going to do is worry
Get
about our
safe.
safety.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is put my hair back, and I've got safety glasses here.
Okay.
You're welcome to put a pair on, and I will do the same.
All right. I think I'll just go with my glasses. They're pretty safe.
That works. So I am going to turn the gas on my torch and kind of set the safety and turn it on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to gently sweep the flame over the cuff in order to just kind of make it look more aged, and it'll start to gradually get darker. Now the thicker the metal is, the longer it's going to take for the color to show. So you just kind of want to sweep the torch back and forth over the surface.
And you want to make sure that you're working on top of a fire-safe surface.
Definitely, definitely.
So you
That's
have a
very
board
important.
here in your tile.
I do. So eventually we'll start to see a little bit of color show up. It's a slow process. And you can pretty much stop whenever you're happy with the look. You don't have to make it super, super dark and consistent. Sometimes you'll get some really pretty rainbow colors, but it's a slow process. You want to kind of keep the torch moving so that it doesn't get too dark in one area and not in another.
Yeah, and since we're looking for kind of quick and easy and getting started projects too, starting out with a pre-made cuff is a great way to go.
Definitely, definitely. Saves you a lot of time.
Oh, there you go. It's really starting to get red.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
So if we keep torching, basically what's going to happen is it's going to get darker and darker, and eventually it'll turn brown. But a lot of times what you want to do is take the torch away for a few seconds and see how the colors develop.
Okay. So once we've got the color exactly how we want it, then where do we go from there?
Then our next step is we are going to put it on the mandrel.
Okay.
So I have an oval bracelet mandrel here, and I'm going to take a chasing hammer, and I'm going to take the ball peen side of the chasing hammer and just start texturing around the outside.
Okay.
So you can see that this is creating small little divots.
Yeah,
If you want to create larger divots, you can turn it over to the other side and hammer with the chasing side.
That's a really great way to get a handmade look, but starting out with that pre-made component.
Definitely. So my favorite way to go about this project is to just kind of hammer around the outside edges of the cuff. And sometimes what you'll have to do is stand it upright and kind of reshape the cuff a little bit. One thing that's great about doing your torch patina first is it kind of softens the metal a little bit, so it's easier for you to get the dimples in the metal that you want. So if you're having a hard time getting an impression in the thick brass, what you can do is take it back to the torch and kind of heat it up, and it'll make it a lot softer.
And you have one that's already hammered, right?
I do, yep. So I have one that's already hammered. What I'm going to do is grab my component here, and I'm going to punch holes in it so that I can lash it onto the component. So I have my 2-hole punch again, and what I'm going to do is...
And this is another pre-made component that people can find.
It is, yep. What I'm going to do is just punch holes in the corners of the component. So I just put it in the 2-hole punch and screw it down until you kind of feel it go through. And once you feel the 2-hole punch go through, you can just start to screw it back in the opposite direction and just kind of let itself let it fall off by itself. You don't want to pull it off because that could damage the metal.
Okay.
Pewter's kind of a soft metal, so you have to be careful with it. So I've punched a hole, and I have a component that I have already punched holes in. So what you do is you place it on the cuff and you gently shape it so that the curve matches the cuff.
All right, that looks really nice. And you get some extra texture there too with the relief impression that's sticking up.
Definitely, definitely. So the next step is to take a Sharpie or a permanent marker, and you're just gonna kind of mark the holes where you wanna punch. So once you have those holes marked, you'll go in and you'll punch a hole in your brass cuff as well. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before.
All right.
Only this time it'll be a little bit more tricky because the brass is a significantly harder metal. So
you have to give it a little more elbow.
Yeah, you do. Oh, come on. Whoops. So
all right.
just punch one hole in all 4 corners, and you want to try as best as you can to make sure that you're lining up with those marks that you made with the permanent marker. And again, once you feel that the 2-hole punch has gone through, you'll see the little core fall out. Then you can, again, unscrew and let it come out by itself.
Very good.
So I have one that I've already punched holes in, and I'm going to take my component and line it up with those holes. I'm then going to take some 24 gauge wire. This is about a 6-inch piece that I've cut, and I'm going to start to kind of staple it on. So this is a technique called lashing, and essentially what you're going to do is just line up your holes, and I like to just kind of work towards the middle of the wire, and you're just basically sewing with the wire.
Sewing it on. And that's a way that you could add a lot of different touches to your bracelet too. You could lash on a lot of different things.
Definitely.
You could do it all the way across the bracelet. It doesn't have to be just right here in the middle.
Right.
But it does look great.
So I'm just wiring through a couple of times. It gives it kind of a really neat organic look that mimics the rustic look of the cuff and the component.
Sure.
So once you have it through as many times as you want, what you can do is turn the cuff over to the back and just kind of run the wire underneath what you've already done.
Okay, so you're hiding your ends there inside the coil.
Yep, and you want to try to tuck it down as best you can so that those tail ends don't poke you when you're wearing it.
Yeah, and it looks really nice and finished on the inside too then.
It does. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other end of the wire. And using the plier helps, but you don't want to use the pliers until the very end because this is coated copper wire. It's not black all the way through, and you don't want to damage the wire at all whenever you are working with it. So you just kind of use it to help just on the very ends. You don't want to grab the middle of the wire, the part that's going to show. So I just do a couple coils. I'm going to take my cutter and trim the ends as flush as possible. I always want to make sure that I'm using the flat side of the cutter facing my work. That way I get the closest cut I possibly can. So
it's nice
cut
and flush.
the ends. It is. And then one little trick that I can share with you is I like to take the back side of my plier and just use that to kind of mash it down. And that kind of pokes the tail ends into the hole that we've punched.
Oh, that's a good tip because then it's really hidden inside and no snags.
Definitely. So you're going to do the same thing to all of the sides, and then eventually you have a cuff.
Very good, and it's a really beautiful way to finish it too. And I like what you did with the other cuffs as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the one in the middle there?
Yeah, definitely. This cuff, I used a flat copper bracelet blank. I annealed it so that it was softer and easier to work with. Then what I did was I textured it a little bit on a bench block with the chasing hammer, and then I also shaped my metal component. I used the same kind of wire to kind of lash the ends down, but this time I did the lashing kind of as close to the edges as possible. That way it kind of just blended into the cuff design, and it really makes a cool masculine look.
It sure does. Yeah, this would be a great project for guys too.